Well, folks, we made it. We made it through our first series of integral and important transits here in 2026, and I'm so proud of all of us. However, let's not let our guard down just yet, and let's not slow our roll just yet either, because over on the horizon in the sign of Aquarius, we have another series of very important transits that are about to take place to close out the month of January. And I'm talking about a series of conjunctions with our friend, the planet Pluto. Now, I know science loves to recategorize Pluto every few years, but here in the language of astrology, Pluto's significations stand strong and fast. And those significations include topics and concepts like intensity, minimization and exaggeration, power and power dynamics, volcanic eruptions, tectonic movement, the taboo, the unconscious, the hidden, and the secretive. These are all very interesting keywords that we're going to see play out in a colorful myriad of ways, as not just one, not just two, but 4 personal planets all cross paths to do a dance with Pluto at the very beginning of the sign of Aquarius. Hey there, I'm Howie, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, then that makes 2 of us, because so am I. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing a little astrology chit-chat on these 4 separate conjunctions that are going to be happening back to back at the end of this month in the sign of Aquarius with our friend Pluto. Let's dive in and take a closer look at exactly what's going on in the sky this month. Now, before we get into our individual delineations, we need to go back to our starting point. And for these equations, our starting point is the planet Pluto and the sign of Aquarius. Now, I already briefly listed some of Pluto's biggest significations, which basically boil down to the concept of the underworld, the world that exists beneath ours. Now, even though Pluto is associated with the concept of death, in mythology, he is represented by the god Hades, the ruler and overseer of the underworld. An interesting concept we need to remember is there is still life in death. Think of it, underworld, an entire world of beings, of culture, of language occurring out of sight in the secretive hidden layer beneath our world. So there is still movement and motion here, and that's where you can get this eruptive volcanic nature with Pluto. It is the underground coming forth to visibility on the material plane, that which we can see and experience as conscious human beings. Now, Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, which is a Saturn-ruled sign. Aquarius is one of those interesting zodiac signs that does not actually have an exaltation ruler. So it is solely ruled by Saturn, and also the exile of the sun. And we use the contrarieties between the sun and Saturn to define what Aquarius as a zodiac sign, as a temple, represents in astrology. So Aquarius is a fixed air sign. This means that the light, which has been extinguished at the very start of the winter solstice, which marks the start of Capricorn, is now in a fixed state of ascending from the underworld, the hidden place beneath the Earth's crust, over to the horizon line, where it will breach the horizon line and continue rising until we get to the summer solstice at the start of Cancer season. So it's this state of fixedness that really stands out in Aquarius's significations. We have this idea of ascension, of intellectuality, and of higher wisdom. There's an eternal truth to Aquarius, but it's not the same eternal truth as the sun. Remember, the sun is in exile. That's because the sun represents centrality, individuality, youth, and the ego. Saturn is quite literally the opposite of those things. Saturn represents maturity and age. Saturn also oversees the collective. Saturn is not an individual type of planet. Saturn sees the benefit of groups, and Saturn also prefers to work on the outskirts or the perimeter of a project, whereas the sun is more that central figure that leads and that directs. Saturn's the orchestrator on the outside. So you can see these contrarieties really light up when you start taking the planets into consideration in this particular placement. Now that we have a better understanding of the sign of Aquarius, We look at the sign, we look at the planet within this temple, which is Pluto, and now all of a sudden the pieces and keywords are starting to fit together to create a narrative or a story. So Pluto in Aquarius can really see us challenge and confront the status quo. That evolutionary drive and need to find utopia that Aquarius represents is going to be intensified, possibly even over-exaggerated and amplified. And because it's Pluto, this is going to be an exploration of the secretive, the hidden, the underdark, the underground, the subterranean, and the taboo. Again, those topics that feel uncomfortable to confront. But with Pluto here, there's kind of a renewed sense of motivation to dive deep into it. One signification that you often see for Aquarius is the concept of ostracization. Tough word to say. I'm really happy I said that once because I'm going to avoid that word for the rest of this video. And exile. These are the lone wolves. These are the odd men out and odd women out. So when you have Pluto in Aquarius, there's this exaggeration and emphasis of the unusual and the unorthodox, and the confrontation again of what status quo actually means, and the forces that will lead the charge and champion these new ideas and new ideals. Now that we understand a little bit more about Pluto in Aquarius, what he represents, what he can reflect in our own lives and our own environments, now we look to the parade of planets knocking at the door of the underworld to greet Hades for a brief moment in the sky. We're going to see Venus, Mercury, the Sun, and Mars all cross the threshold to dance for a brief moment with Pluto. And it's very interesting that Mars will be closing out this parade because, let me tell you, anytime Mars and Pluto have a dialogue in the sky, things tend to get eruptive, explosive, truly monumentally volcanic. But we'll get to that later on in this video. For now, let's start with our beautiful goddess, Venus, who is first up in line to greet Hades at the door of the underworld, who will cross paths with Pluto approximately January 19th into January 20th, depending on where you're situated in the world. Now, Venus is this planet of love, harmonization, and connection. She seeks to bring things together. She seeks to give life. And here we have her dancing with the planet of death, of endings, of purgation and upheaval, but also of purification and regeneration. So we have the life-giving qualities of Venus now mixing with the overseer of the underworld. Venus conjunct Pluto can see us dip into a period of intense temptation, of pleasure-seeking behavior. We can also find beauty suddenly in the taboo and the macabre. This can put into question and highlight femininity and dominance. Feminine-led dominance or dominance in feminine spaces. We can also see an eruptive burst of creativity and of romance. This combination can also find us connecting through secretive measures or hidden messages, or through the concept of power exchange. This is a really interesting time to be exploring those more taboo subjects when it comes to love, sex, and romance. Next up, we have Mercury crossing paths with Pluto on January 22nd. Now, Mercury is the planet of communication first and foremost, whether this be the written word, the spoken word, or simply the ideas of linguistics, language, and interpretation. So mixing these significations with Pluto, we're going to be seeing a lot of conversations surrounding the secretive and the hidden. This is a time where hidden things and secret messages will be brought forward, rocketed forward to the surface, in fact. So secrets being unearthed, both literally and figuratively, are definitely not unheard of with a combination like this. Mercury and Pluto also begs the question of the status quo when it comes to learning, education, and academics. We might see a turn towards unorthodox thinking and unorthodox intellectuality. We might also see either a minimization or exaggeration of technology and technological advancements, and what that could mean for humanity's evolution overall as a collective. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking immediately of AI as a concept with this particular combination, and you are absolutely right. We might be seeing announcements on new advancements in the AI sphere, or we could just simply be seeing new modes of communication overall, new ways to connect through language. Now, let's not forget that Mercury also rules 2 double-bodied signs. So, as a planet and his significations, he can represent fluidity and moving between boundaries and borders. With Pluto there and the destructive nature of Pluto, we can see an erosion and destruction of boundaries. Following on Mercury's coattails, we have the Sun, who will conjoin Pluto the very next day on January 23rd. Now, the Sun is a really important part of this series of conjunctions because the Sun represents life, vitality, and our plot lines. Remember what I said about Pluto? This could mean literal death, or this could simply be a metaphorical death of our life purpose. We really could see people's life directions taking a hard left off a cliff, and they come back and completely redefine their sense of self and their sense of purpose in this conscious experience. At the same time, we can also see a death of the ego. The Sun does represent the ego, and so those egoistic, singular, individualistic behaviors could be confronted, challenged, and completely overhauled at this time. We may end up finding newfound wisdom when confronting death, power dynamics, and volcanic and eruptive situations. We can see individuals rising to fame through unorthodox methods or taboo methods. The Sun is a point of illumination. All eyes are on the Sun. So remember what I said with Mercury about secrets being revealed? The Sun doubles down on that signification as well. This is a spotlight being shone through the cracks of the earth into the underworld. Because the Sun is this central figure, we could see major tectonic shifts in authority and governance overall. And lastly, because Pluto is so deeply connected to the concept of death, the afterlife, the underworld, and the fact that the underworld is still a living space, metaphorically, the Sun conjunct Pluto may see some of us grappling with the concept of legacy, whether we are leaving behind our own legacy or we are faced with somebody else's legacy. Legacy essentially allows one to live on after death. It is a metaphorical afterlife, so to speak. Now, on the flip side of things, what I said at the beginning of the video rings true here, where the Sun is debilitated in the sign of Aquarius. He normally rules Leo, which is on the opposite side of the chart. So when he's in Aquarius, this sign that's about the collective, the group, his centrality is taken off stage. It is out of focus. And his youthful ego can be burned by that. So we might experience frustration with this inability to be seen, with this inability to be the center of something. We might end up seeing a significant loss of control depending on where Aquarius is situated in our charts. That also ties in with Pluto and his signification of power and power dynamics. And finally, last but certainly not the least, we have Mars conjoining Pluto on January 27th to close out the first month of 2026. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I find that anytime Mars and Pluto sit down to have a dialogue, things get real and monumentally heated up extraordinarily quickly. Remember, Pluto has the ability to exaggerate, intensify, and amplify. And now you have the planet of war, the planet of passion, aggression, of action, courage, and bravery, amplified by Pluto in a sign like Aquarius. One of the easiest delineations here is challenging the status quo through war, competitiveness, and strife. When these two planets come together, actions and reactions can get very explosive, very loud, very fiery. Intellectual concepts, communication gets heated up to a boiling point, and volcanoes erupt. Figuratively and literally. You have two planets that signify the concept of dominance coming together. So the idea of power imbalances are probably going to be highlighted to the max at this point. With Mars, we have that concept of separation and severance. So whereas Pluto can represent a purgation, a removal of something, we might see this happen with absolute surgical precision now that Mars is involved. And on the flip side and brighter side of these two planets coming together, you can really have the archetype of the lone wolf singular hero rising up from the dregs to champion a new idea that challenges the status quo and creates a domino effect that really changes the tide of war and tide of combat, so to speak. This is a courageous archetype that is ready to go up against the greatest odds. These two planets can represent courage in the absolute darkest hour. Now that we understand these planetary combinations individually, we can actually take them and combine them into one longer storyline. So for example, we're starting with Venus, whose desire is to create and to connect. Here we can see ourselves creating new alliances, harmonizing with other ideas and other ways of thinking. With Mercury coming in the mix next, we have this analytical curiosity that allows us to bring these inventive ideas to life, breathe them into our conscious experience, and start using these new ways of communicating. The next chapter sees the ego make a return, the sun. Here we might see glass ceilings reached, limits reached, as a result of asking, well, what about me? That egoistic desire to be the center of attention, or simply old structures of governance and old ways of doing things getting in the way of progress. And then finally, we have Mars and his action coming into the story to break through those glass ceilings and those limits, and really digging his heels in and saying, as a martyr, this is what I believe in, and I will fight to the end for what I believe in and for what I feel is the new truth for the collective. And there you have it. Those are some of my very brief delineations on what we can expect to see over the next couple of weeks during this series of conjunctions. So I'm very interested to see in how this speaks to my conscious experience and those around me. Thanks again for watching. I hope you gleaned some newfound wisdom from this particular video, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. As always, take care of yourselves and each other. See ya.